today's video, Lux Life brings you the scary games famous not for the scare they give, but for their price tags. Let's start with number 11. Number 11. Chiller. Chiller is one game that many owners of the console never saw. Originally released in the arcades in 1986 and then ported to the NES in 1990, Chiller is an unusual game. In the console version, players kill monsters in 5 stages, which is different than the arcade game where players tortured people strapped in various medieval devices. Still, it seems quite graphic. The reason why NES owners didn't get their hands on a copy of Chiller back in the 90s was that it was an unlicensed game, and unlicensed games meant big money. A copy of a second-hand game went for $124. Number 10. Enemy Zero. Due to their high-quality standards and low availability, many rare games on the Sega Saturn were amongst the first to sharply increase in price following the console's demise. Games such as Panzer Dragoon Saga, Shining Force 3, and Dragon Force soared in price as collectors hurried to add them to their collections. The second entry in the D franchise, Enemy Zero, is much different than the previous game. Here, players have to compete with invisible enemies using only sound to find their location, whereas the original was a more point-and-click affair. To get a copy of Enemy Zero will cost approximately $150.
So it's you. You killed him, didn't you?
Number 9. Splatterhouse 3. Another classic series full of monsters and gore is Splatterhouse. Beating demons to a bloody pulp was huge back when it came out for the Sega Genesis in 1993. The game faced a lot of criticism, but was highly popular. Unfortunately, Splatterhouse 3 also released just ahead of the Sega 32X in the US and the Sega Saturn. Also, it didn't help that the marketing behind it was dull and any publicity it had quickly died off. The result is that these days, new copies of Splatterhouse 3 typically go for $150 to $200 if bought online. Number 8. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Developed by the licensed shovelware extraordinaire LJN, Nightmare on Elm Street has players control for up to 4 teenagers who need to collect Freddy's bones in Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors. The game itself is nothing unusual or spectacular, as is the case with most games LJN made during the NES era. However, there has been a spike in popularity for speedrunning the game due to its unique 4-player gameplay. A complete copy of the game can fetch close to $200 online.
Oh god, Freddy's coming. Ah!
Before we continue, remember to subscribe to Lux Life and click the bell icon to get regular updates on our latest uploads. Also, if you like this video, click the like button and share it with your friends. Number 7. Resident Evil Gaiden. Starting in 1996, the franchise sold millions of games in multiple console generations and earned Capcom billions of dollars. However, one game in the series didn't fare well, making it a valuable collector's item. Resident Evil Gaiden came out in the US in 2002 for the Game Boy Color. When it was released, reviewers gave it a bad review and a less-than-average score. But a game selling poorly is music to a collector's ears, as copies of Resident Evil Gaiden can now go for $200 to $300 for a sealed copy. That's a far cry from the original price of $29.99. Who would have thought? Number 6. Silent Hill 2. As seen on this list, certain games increase in value because of their age or lack of availability. However, in the case of Silent Hill 2, the game jumped in value because it's just so damn good. Silent Hill 2 is not only considered the best entry of the Silent Hill franchise, but many would also argue it's the best survival horror game ever made. The greatest hits version of Silent Hill 2 is worth around $150, but a factory-sealed copy of the original version of the game sold for $213. Number 5. Uninvited. Like many horror games, Uninvited is set in an old mansion. Players search for their sister while trying to avoid an array of traps, ghosts, and other entities, all hell-bent on killing you. The game will also kill your wallet, as a brand new copy of Uninvited can go for $233. Number 4. Hunting Ground. Considering a spiritual successor to Clock Tower 3, Hunting Ground was another survival horror game that saw players controlling Fiona and her brave doggo, Huey. Like other games in the Clock Tower series, Hunting Ground didn't blow critics away when it came out, but fans loved it. However, because of lower than expected sales, there are not many copies of Hunting Ground floating around. That means prices for the game have surged on eBay. One factory sealed copy of the game sold for $260. Number 3. Rule of Rose. Rule of Rose is another PlayStation 2 game that is surprisingly rare and could easily be one of the newest games to see a several-fold increase in value since its release date. The game takes place in an abandoned orphanage in England during 1930. This of course means dealing with creepy kids, which is never fun. Maybe that was one reason why critics didn't care for the game. Another victim of lackluster sales, the Rule of Rose was gutted when it was released 2 months before the release of the PlayStation 3. Earlier this month, a factory-sealed copy of Rule of Rose sold for $412. Number 2. Clock Tower. Clock Tower on the PlayStation is the second game of the series, but the first to make it across the Pacific. Its localization was likely due to the success of the first Resident Evil, which was released the year before. Despite its creepy, foreboding atmosphere and terrifying antagonist, Clock Tower didn't wow critics when it came out in 1997, but it had the kind of scares horror fans loved, making it a much-revered cult classic. Clock Tower became one of the PlayStation sleeper games and eventually became very hard to find. A collector looking to complete their horror collection today will need to put up some big bucks, as a sealed copy of the game went for $500 in September. Number 1. Castlevania. Castlevania is no doubt a classic. It was the start of a long-running franchise that would still be in development if Konami would agree to make new games. But we're here to talk about the absurd price this game can draw on the collector's market. The first adventure of Simon Belmont had gamers take on iconic horror characters such as Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, and of course, Dracula himself. The original Castlevania is not a hard game to find, but obtaining a brand new copy certainly is. A 32-year-old sealed game is worth its weight in gold, especially if it has a horizontal seam or H seam. And that's the key. The seam is where the factory that produced the cartridge sealed the package, and it's an indicator of whether a game has been resealed or not. However, last month, one sealed copy of Castlevania sold for $449.95, and one rare sealed Dracula variant sold for a whopping $699.99. That's it, guys! Let us know if you'd be willing to pay these horrendous prices for these horror games in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you share this with your friends, and subscribe to Lux Life and click the bell icon to get regular updates. Lux Life. Find what calls to you!